everyone. Good morning and welcome to the Optimapharm podcast. I'm your host, Stephanie Garey, and today I'm speaking with the super lovely Vassil Vassilev, Head of Biostatistics at Optimapharm, who is here to talk us through the Monte Carlo approach to smarter clinical trial design. Sounds super fun. How are you today, Vassil?
Doing good, thank you. What about you?
Yeah, really well, thank you. Now, before we dig into this, do you want to tell us a bit about what the head of biostatistics does at Optimapharm, please?
Of course, yeah. I'm essentially leading a group of statisticians and statistical programmers at Optimapharm, and we're trying in really most efficient way to support our sponsors in designing and execution of clinical trials.
Nice. And so today's podcast episode has the words Monte Carlo in it. And when you hear Monte Carlo, a lot of people think about casinos, but I would love for you to explain to us, please, what it means in this context.
This is actually quite an interesting story, which many people don't know about, because Monte Carlo method is not something new. Trendy statistical concept stolen from the gambling industry. The roots go back to the 1940s, around the time of Second World War, where scientists working in Los Alamos in the United States, associated with the Manhattan Project, researchers there were dealing with extremely complex problems where exact mathematical solutions were not practical and feasible. So they started thinking outside of the box how to resolve the complex problem, and probably influenced by the card games, they came to the solution which was the backbone of what we today know as a Monte Carlo method. The name itself, of course, it is clear it's influenced by the famous casino in Monaco, because the whole concept is based on repeated random sampling. But the method does not originate from the gambling industry, as many people think. What is important for today is not the history itself, but the core idea, because it is actually very simple. If a problem is too complex to predict with certainty, instead of trying to calculate one exact answer, you simulate many possible outcomes and see what happens.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating story, and love that it's led us to this conversation over like 100 years. It's amazing. And so clinical trial design then, often based on a set of key assumptions, which you just alluded to. But from your experience, where are sponsors most commonly underestimating risk at this stage?
I think the biggest issue in that is that many clinical trials are still designed around the assumptions that look reasonable on paper, but are much less reliable in real life. A very common example is treatment effect assumptions. Early data may look promising, but translating that into a realistic effect size for example, confirmatory study is not straightforward. The same applies to variability assumptions, dropout assumptions, event rates, or operational assumptions like recruitment timelines and even site activation, if you want. I think where risk is often underestimated is in treating uncertainty as something small and manageable, rather than as something that fundamentally shapes the outcome of the study. Actually, this is where I think the mindset needs to shift a little bit. The question should not only be what assumptions are we making. The more important question is what happens if those assumptions turn out to be wrong. Because in reality, no assumptions will be perfectly correct, and understanding the impact of what uncertainty is where better planning starts. And this is exactly where simulation method is strong and provides insight during the design stage. To be fair, this is not because sponsors are making poor decisions. Clinical development is complex, and traditional planning approaches are often force simplification. But the reality is that a study design is only as strong as the assumptions behind it. And sometimes the biggest risk is not the treatment itself, it is the confidence we place in assumptions that may turn out to be wrong. From our side, because we're working across many studies with many sponsors, we naturally see patterns. The same types of issues come up again and again. That gives us a practical view of where risk tends to sit, even before the study actually starts.
Yeah, you've got all of that insider knowledge. It's amazing. Was there a particular white paper I think you mentioned?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we do. We do have a white paper which has been influenced by Project Optimus, influenced by FDA. Recently, a couple of months ago, I would say, where we're just talking about how this shift is happening in the industry from simple assumptions to a data-driven decision-making framework.
Yeah, amazing. We'll link that in the show notes if anybody wants to read it. Fab. And then, so from your experience, what are some of the real world consequences when these assumptions turn out to be inaccurate?
Well, the consequences can be very significant because a small planning error early on can become major issue later. For example, if recruitment is slower than expected, timelines moves, that can affect operational planning, vendor commitments, internal resources and allocation, and of course, overall program strategy. If assumptions around variability or event rates or treatment effect are inaccurate, then the scientific side becomes affected as well. You may end up with a study that is underpowered, meaning the treatment may actually have value, but the study is simply not positioned to demonstrate it clearly. On the other hand, if assumptions are too conservative, then sponsor may over-design the study. More patients, more sites, longer timelines, higher cost without real necessity. So it goes both ways. And then there is the decision-making aspect, which is often underestimated. Sponsors make important business decisions based on development milestones. If the assumptions behind these milestones are fragile, then decision-making becomes much less reliable. So really what looks like a small modeling assumption at design stage can have a strategic implication much later. That is why this is not just a statistical discussion. It is really a business risk discussion.
Yeah, so many elements to it. It's really fascinating for me. But so, in simple terms, again, for me, how do these simulations help sponsors to better understand and manage that risk?
Well, at the simplest level, Monte Carlo method helps us move from one predefined feature to many possible features. Traditional planning often gives us a single answer. For example, this design gives us a certain power or study will recruit in 12 months, for example. But real life rarely behaves exactly like the average scenario. Simulation allows us to ask a different question. Instead of asking what happened if our assumptions are correct, we ask what happened if reality varies around these assumptions, which of course it always does. So rather than producing one optimistic timeline, we can estimate a range of outcomes and understand the probabilities. For example, what happened if treatment effect is more than expected? What if patient variability is higher than assumed? What if dropout is higher than planned? Or from an operational perspective, what if recruitment is lower than expected? That changes the quality of decision making quite significantly, I would say. Because decision makers are no longer relying on a single optimistic scenario, and instead of discussing uncertainties in vague terms, I would say, we can quantify them. And I think that is the real value here. It is not about complexity, it is about making uncertainty way more visible in a very practical way, I would say.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Then one more question. I mean, it'd be really interesting to hear some practical examples of where simulation has influenced a key design decision. And then how do you see this approach that's evolving in the future of clinical development, please?
A very practical example is recruitment forecasting, because this is an area where assumptions often look very simple, but reality becomes much more complicated. A standard plan may assume a certain number of sites, an average recruitment rate, and then produce an expected completion timeline. But in reality, site activation is staggered, recruitment performance varies significantly, screen failure affects actual enrollment, and even seasonal effects may have impact depending on indication and geography. So what simulation allows us to do is create a much more realistic view of what recruitment may actually looks like. Instead of saying we expect completion by a certain date, we can say there is a certain probability of achieving that milestone under realistic assumption. That became very useful because it directly supports decision making. For example, do we need more sites? Should we activate countries earlier? Do we need some kind of contingency planning? Should we challenge assumptions before committing to a timeline? That is where simulations become practical tool rather than a purely statistical exercise. And looking ahead, I genuinely believe this approach will become much more standard. Clinical trials are becoming more complex. Timelines are under more pressure, and development decisions are becoming more expensive. And we already see this broad shift happening across the industry. Already mentioned about the good example of FDA's Project Optimus, which essentially is pushing the industry to move away from overly simplified development assumptions, particularly around dose selections in the oncology, and toward much more evidence-driven decision making. So relying purely on simplified deterministic assumptions will become increasingly difficult to justify. But we need to be clear. Simulations does not replace expertise or the judgment. Quite the opposite, actually. It straightens decision making by making uncertainty much more transparent and visible. And from a CRO perspective, I think that is where real value sits, not just executing studies efficiently, but helping sponsors make better informed decision earlier.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much. So well explained. I lied. I have a couple more follow-up questions. I'm super interested.
Go
You
ahead.
mentioned things like the seasonal time can affect things dramatically. Is that things like if it's really cold and wintry, you're going to get fewer participants commit, or what does that mean?
The very basic example is if we focus, as I said, it depends on geography as well, but if we
Yeah.
focus on the European region, we all know that July and August periods are vacation periods. So if you're running a clinical trial, you need to expect that in July and August you have less subjects recruited. Another example is second half of December. Again, Christmas period, holiday season. That's another very, very basic example. But on the top of that, for different indications, there could be separate factors. For example, in dermatology, you may experience increase in, or let's say worsening in different indications because during the summer period because of the sun. So we have different factors that we need to weight in order to really build a realistic assumption, and we can commit to specific timelines for the recruitment.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you for, appeasing my curiosity there. Then last question, you mentioned things are getting harder. I think everything in the world is getting harder, and I can imagine why clinical trials are. Do you think with all the, the advancements with technology and AI, is that supporting things, or is it kind of making it still a little bit complicated?
It depends.
Yeah.
My personal view is that AI technology it is on a good level, but it is still not on a level that can really take decisions separately or influence this decision. It's a great tool, no question. Everybody is using it every day, but it's still a tool. It helps you, for example, summarize important information quickly, so you can take the decision, but it cannot take decision because of you. Not yet. Maybe in future we'll reach to that point, but I would say not yet. And to me, honestly, not within the next 5-10 years.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Thank you. And that's why, like you said, that expertise is absolutely crucial. And
Expertise is, yeah.
exactly. And so I was really pleased to say, if you're a biotech listening to this and looking to run clinical trials in the near future, and want us to run an initial simulation, we can absolutely do that for you. You can fill out the attached form that's in the podcast description. Please don't be shy. We'd love to help. But that's it from us today. Vassil, thank you so much for all your great insight. It's been wonderful chatting to you. And if anyone would like to chat more to Vassil and the team at Optimapharm, just reach out. As I say, we'd really love to hear from you. But keep in touch and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
See you next time. Bye.